All right, welcome to part 2 of our feedback exercise. Just a reminder, be filling these out as we go, and then you can just attach a picture up in Canvas and turn that in with the assignment, and we'll get that checked in. But this is really important stuff, and I want to just put the important emphasis as we talk about this on the relationships that regard this, because whenever we have feedback, what happens is sometimes there can be a strained relationship as a result. And we have to get into a world where we understand that conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing. And that means not necessarily like conflict is always like butting heads, but where we recognize there's differences of opinion, where people are there to help us out when we're trying to be coached, and that can be a very important thing. And when we talk about appreciation, this isn't on the worksheet, this is just for free, but we often talk about 4 letters that's just simply I see in you. I see in you. How can you have I see in you conversations with people? I see in you that you have a bright future in this area. I see in you that you're a really hard worker. I see in you that you're very loyal. Things like that, because that's going to help us with that appreciation factor, so that we always know that the people care about us and love us. The more we notice that, the more apt people will be to receive feedback, and the healthier we'll be able to give feedback to others as well. So appreciation is that first one. Coaching is the second. Whenever it's anything that helps us get better at something, whenever someone comes alongside of us and offers us that coaching. And then the third one is evaluation, where there's some type of rating or ranking, whether it be comparing it to some type of standard or to other people of your peers. And so ask yourself the question, where did I see feedback in my life this week, and how did I respond? Did I get a grade on something and I felt angry about it, or I felt that was unjust or anything else? Because that's part of it. Whenever we receive feedback, is that we have natural defense mechanisms. We all like to be right. And the reality is that one of the quickest ways to show that is our posture. Sometimes our posture can go to having our arms crossed. Sometimes we can go to slumping over or slouching, like we're very sad when we receive that feedback. And all those things can communicate things to people. This isn't on the worksheet, but I think it's really important to recognize that some of the physical barriers that can help overcome that. One is eye contact. Making eye contact with people who we're giving feedback to or receiving feedback from can be very important in communicating this isn't just information. I value you as a person. Oftentimes, touching them on the arm, but not on the shoulder. If someone touches you on the shoulder, that's the way people often feel like they're being looked down upon. But sometimes, when it's appropriate, of course, if there's a physical touch that's involved in that's appropriate, that can be something that just conveys like, hey, I see you as a person. I value you more than just what you bring to the table in a work environment. So whenever we go through this, what happens is that if we receive feedback that is unrequested or unexpected, we have an emotional reaction. And what happens is we try to immediately find something wrong with it. Now, this is called wrong spotting in the book that we talk about here. Thank God for the feedback, and also thanks for the feedback. So when we see these, here's some examples of wrong spotting, and these are in your blanks here. First, it's 2 + 2 = 5 wrong. In other words, you feel like that it's factually incorrect, the information that they have. Second is that it's different planet wrong. In other words, everyone else knows that I was joking. How come you took me seriously? You must be living on a different planet or something. Third, it used to be right. And so this is something, maybe you have somebody that's older than you that gives you feedback, and they talk about the way they used to do it, and the assumption is that's the only right way to do it. That's the way you feel. The fourth is that it's right according to the wrong people. In other words, these people just don't like me. They're biased. They're ganging up against me. That can be one of the defense mechanisms as well. Number 5 is that your context is wrong. In other words, you just don't understand how it works here. Like, you might understand how it works over there in your situation, but you don't understand me or my job the way that you should. The next one is that it's right for you, but it's wrong for me. In other words, maybe you're just wired differently, and that's why you can do that, but I'm not wired the same way. You don't understand me, is one of the ways that is often said. The next one is the feedback is right, but it's not right now. In other words, it's just the wrong timing. I don't have time for this right now. This just isn't the best approach to take right now. You don't understand the situation. Maybe the last thing is that it's just not helpful. Because I can't do anything with that feedback. If you tell me I did a bad job, but you don't tell me how I could do better, then it's just not even helpful. And so whenever we have those reactions, that's very natural to do so. But in order to combat this wrong spotting, what we need to do is we must shift our mindset from that's wrong to tell me more. And one of the best ways to understand this is, let's say that you have a soup can. And just imagine this is a soup can. And on the label, the soup can, it just says soup. That's it. Well, that's feedback. You know what's inside the can, but at the same time, all you know that is not green beans, it's not corn, it's soup. But what kind? Is it chicken noodle? Is it some type of chowder? Is it some type of chili? Does that classify as soup? I don't even know what to do with that. And so what we have to do is recognize that the labels are generic feedback with little substance. And so when we talk about that, what we have to do is recognize that we have to mine for more data. We have to open the can, we have to figure out what's inside, and one of the best ways to do that is to ask questions. Now there's going to be there's 4 arrows at the bottom of your page. I'm going to skip over that for now, but I'm going to give you some other things, so you can just cross that off on there and that's fine. But once you spot the label, you have to figure out what is under the label. And so this is really important, and I think it's important that if we're going to get to past the point of just the label itself and to get under the label, there's a few things that we have to do, and these aren't on your worksheet, but I think they're worth you writing down. The first one we have to do is we need to take a pause. Okay? Because whenever we get negative feedback, or whenever we have feedback that we perceive as negative, what happens is we have a negative reaction to that. When we have that negative reaction, we want to emote, and that's when we say things that could be foolish or harmful or hurtful. And so we don't want to do that. And so one of the best things to do is whenever you get feedback like that, just train yourself to pause. Just train yourself not to say anything for 3 seconds or so, because chances are the first thing out of your mouth would not be helpful. And then the second thing to do is to thank the person for that feedback. And that might seem odd if they're angry with you or whatever else, but you can simply pause and say, thank you for letting me know. And that gives you time to gather your thoughts, your emotions, and to be able to come back and to ask some questions, because that's really important to say here, is to say, okay, so could you tell me more? And that's an important thing to be able to say, is just say, could you tell me more about what's going on in this situation? Could you help me understand is another one that's really important to be able to say. Help me understand where you're coming from on this. And actually, I don't even like to say it that way. I'd like to put it completely in my own perspective. Could you help me understand so that I can improve? Don't even mention them at all. Don't even mention you at all if you can, which is quite difficult to do, but it can really help to make these situations a lot better off. And so that you can actually receive the feedback, and so that you're not just walking away, the person not walking away like, wow, they're really angry or whatever else. So the first question that you want to ask here, where is the feedback coming from? And then the second one is, where is the feedback going to? And so you see these arrows below. And so the number one, it says, what makes you say that? This is a very good question, because we want to see, okay, where are you coming from on this? What's your history? What's your background in helping me to understand how this came about? Because you might be blindsided by this. But then the second thing is how you respond to that. What should I do differently? And this is the forward arrow, what is going to. So how can I make this situation better? How can I improve my performance? What is it you think would be helpful in order for me to move forward in this? And those can be very helpful things to help understand here that feedback is a difficult thing. Most people do not like to give feedback. And a lot of times it can be cold, but it doesn't have to be cold. It can be warm, You can walk away with a lot more respect for the person that you just gave feedback to if the other person handles it well. That can be said of yourself. How is it that you can help this person walk away with a higher impression of who you are than what you started with? So there are some triggers that block feedback. And our triggers are obstacles because they keep us from engaging skillfully in the conversation. The first one is a truth trigger. This is when we're set off by the substance of the feedback itself. It's somehow off, unhelpful, or untrue. We just say, this is just flat out wrong. And in response, we often feel indignant, wronged, or exasperated, which is like worn out, like you just don't get it. And so what we do in these situations is we need to separate appreciation, coaching, and evaluation, and then dig under the label deeper to see what's beneath this. Maybe it seems wrong at first, but maybe there's some truth to it that I need to mine out underneath that label. Secondly, these are relational triggers. Maybe it's that you just don't flat out like the person that's giving you feedback, or you're in a rocky spot relationally with them. And these are set off by the particular person who's giving you the feedback. Or maybe you're shocked because the person who has giving you feedback in the time has never done that before. So what you want to do in this situation is you want to recognize that your reaction is based on what we believe about the giver or about how we feel treated by them. And so what to do in this situation is to disentangle the what of the feedback from the who. If I were to hear this from someone else who I respect, how would I hear it? And then finally, number 3 is identity triggers. And these are probably the toughest ones. These are set off when our sense of who we are is questioned. So in other words, our identity is questioned here. And we often feel overwhelmed, threatened, or ashamed. And this is difficult because we might have a poker face about this in response, and we might say, okay, well, yeah, I can do that, or I can change that. But really, underneath what happens is we have a deep sense of shame or guilt. And what we have to do in response to this is really proactive and also reactive. It's to cultivate a growth identity, to recognize that I am a child of God. God loves me unconditionally. I'm still growing, and I want to receive feedback. And remind ourselves of the promises of God, of who we are in Christ. Because when our identity is questioned, whenever we feel threatened in this way, it's a good sign that we really want to do some more foundational work and reminding ourselves of who God is and who we are in Christ because of what He has done for us. Hey, so just on the relational side of things, I want to give you one closing story here that I think will help out. I had an elder named Dave in my first church. Dave was a younger guy, just in his 30s, so he didn't really seem like an older elder by any means. But whenever there was conflict in the church, people would always ask Dave to step in. And I had no idea why. All I knew is that when we sent Dave out to work with people, is that there were normally good results. It didn't really hit me until one day when I had messed up, when I had a lousy attitude towards some people. And God had already convicted me of it, but Dave called up, and Dave said, hey, I need to come talk to you. And I knew exactly that he was going to come talk to me about what, but I didn't know about how. And so I just said, okay, well, yeah, I'd love to see how he does this. And so Dave came and talked to me. And what really struck me is that as Dave was giving me this feedback, which I desperately needed to hear, even though God had already convicted me of it, is that Dave was literally talking through the tears. He was weeping as he talked to me, talking about how my actions and my attitude had really hurt somebody else. And that even though I could prove that I was right by the book, if you will, at the end of the day, my attitude was wrong, and that hurt people. And as Dave literally wept for me and for the situation, I could tell that this is why Dave was so successful and his feedback that he gave to people is because there was no question in my mind that Dave deeply cared for me and he deeply cared for the church that I was leading. And so in the same way, this is what we want to do. When we're giving and receiving feedback, make sure that the people that you are having this interaction with know that you care, know that they are loved, to know that you care more about just fixing this problem, but that you care about them as people. If you do that, you can have lifelong relationships, even if they are mixed in with work. you can help overlap these things, and you can let people know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they matter to you, and that you love them, and that you only want to see them improve. And the same thing can be said for you when you receive that feedback, that you earnestly want to grow. All right, so that's it. Go ahead and fill these out. Again, if I left one of them blank, you can just cross it off, take a picture of it or scan it, and turn it in on Canvas. And then hopefully you'll be able to take a lot with you from this feedback. Thank you so much. God bless.